Okay, firearms are really a symbol of power. When someone's carrying a firearm, they feel a sense of power. How do you get someone to latch on to different types of different alternatives for a sense of power? Someone in prison, for example, they do carry concealed weapons. They look for ways to take the most unusual parts of a jail cell to craft a weapon to use. I mean, what do you do in that case? How do you change their beliefs?
I don't think you can do it if they're in an environment in which they perceive they're in tremendous danger. Mm-hmm. Probably if I was a prisoner in a state prison like Gattaca, I would have a weapon too, because there is danger up there, at least from my perspective, there's great danger. They have to be in an environment which allows them to experiment with a softer approach to life. For instance, asserting themselves and saying, I don't like what you did just now. Although they know the person won't change, all they get to do is say what their opinion is.
So a young girl just moves to New York City. Her first job, she's working for like Bear and Stern Investment Banking Corporation. She goes out for a jog. Very naive. Around Central Park, should she be able to carry a concealed weapon to avoid being raped in mid-daylight?
Pulling the trigger on a gun, I mean, people who've never shot a gun would probably think to themselves, oh yeah, pull the trigger, you know, because you have to kill this person. But if you ever shot anybody, and I don't know if you ever killed anybody, I haven't, but I've known people that have and so forth, you know. And I'll tell you, it's like different, you know. You can imagine too, you don't even have to be anyone that shoots anyone, you can imagine if you pull the trigger and you end a human life, I mean, it's a different world. You're a different person, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of police officers that say the same things too. When they had to do it in the line of duty, but don't think that they just totally ignore that and it's like out of their day. It's not like the TV shows.
And you treat people with tremendous respect, even though they've done heinous things. They have to be treated with respect as an equal and allowed to experiment, well, not to experiment, you can't experiment with violence. Allowed to experiment with a softer approach to life. It's more persuasion and survival mode.
United States. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
and subways, for example.
Subways.
So you're in New York City, and someone is just brought into the local jail. Someone who just committed, a really violent crime. They had taken a gun, a pistol from one of the local rifle shops, and used it to commit a crime. How do you go about? What's the first step to attempting to rehabilitate someone like that has a history of carrying concealed weapons and using weapons in very violent acts?
That is really difficult because usually the person's life is structured around that kind of violence. It's again survival mode. Where many people that come from the slums will tell you, well, if I act like you want me to act, I'm going to win. What do they call them? Punk. I mean, that's a really terrible thing to call a person. But if they act the way I want them to, that's what they'll feel like. And also, they probably, if they were doing drugs, dealing drugs, they'd make far more money in the city than they can make up here going to work for Walmart, like I might suggest.
Now, how do you break that pattern?
I don't know. I've never done it yet. I think it can, though. It's people come to the point that it's so many consequences, they can't stand it anymore. Pain is always the thing that makes change happen. And it's funny, as a counselor, you can't block the pain too much because they won't grow. So, maybe being in prison for 20 years, having nothing eventually.
You know. I mean, the only reason I'd see for concealing a weapon and being a private citizen is so you don't panic the public around you. That's understandable. But I wouldn't be panicked if I saw a man or woman walking down the street with a simple firearm attached.
Like, what is the feeling like when you can help someone solve a problem?
Well, if you can clearly see that you're helping somebody with a problem, it feels very nice. Most of the time you can't quite tell. And it's not until they go out and over time they behave a little bit differently that ultimately.
What about people living in New York City, like the young college graduate who is a female and lives in New York and is jogging around Central Park? Should they be allowed to carry a gun?
Guns are kind of heavy. Well, I know the...
Should people be allowed to carry concealed weapons?
Well, you know, a gun is a lethal means, you know, to get rid of a perpetrator. There's also non-lethal means. I mean, I know some people see the gun as, you know, instantly pull trigger, bang, that person's not going to bother you anymore. But you can also use pepper spray as well. Pepper spray is a good alternative. Puts down most attackers. I had a friend who actually got hit by pepper spray, and he only got hit by a small amount of it in the wind off a little bit of clothing, and is enough to... And he's a big boy too, and it actually put him out of commission for a little while there. And he still lived, you know, whereas a gun will... Depends who you are. I mean, I believe that, you know, special agents, so forth, police should be able to, of course. I mean, especially undercover, where they already do. As far as private citizens, now, I believe in the right to bear arms, but if you're hiding a weapon, then chances are you're hiding more intent than meets the eye if you're hiding that gun.